Hello and welcome to the revision series of grade 10 social sciences. Today we are trying to cover lesson number 2 from history, that is nationalism in India. And I would like to give you the assurance that this is going to be a bit lengthy, and I will try to cover all the topics that are there from the NCERT textbook. So the first thing is, what I want all of you to do is try to memorize important events that have happened in the last 4 decades of India's freedom struggle. So through that method, it would be easier for all of you to memorize the dates, events, years, and names of people. So let's start without wasting any time. So first thing is, from 1910 to 1920 or 1911 to 1920, the major event that that has happened is World War One. So the discussion would be revolving mostly around World War One and the events the events that have unfolded in Europe and how it impacted India. So that would be the discussion. Apart from this, from this decade, the other major events are Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Rowlatt Act, and Khilafat issue. That would be from the first decade that we are trying to cover here. So let's start with World War One. World War One is an event that is concerned something with European kingdoms or countries. But what actually happened during this particular thing was, because most of these European kingdoms and countries were colonizing many parts of the earth or many other continents like Asia, Africa, Americas. So these kingdoms brought people from those countries whom they were colonizing into the war. So that's the reason this is actually called World War. Otherwise, it's nothing but just an event within European kingdoms. So what do we actually have to do with World War One when kingdoms like Germany, Austria-Hungary, Serbia, they were fighting amongst themselves? Because we were colonized by these European powers, we were also dragged into the war. Otherwise, we have nothing to do with this war. Now, this is the first time uh, uh, a war in which trenches were laid. For months together, soldiers were forced to live in these trenches, lying right next to rats, corpses, without food, without water, but they were actually glorified as war heroes. And during this war, deadly planning was actually happening between the major powers like France, Germany, Russia, and many other kingdoms. Also, there was heavy recruitment of soldiers to participate in the war. And for the first time, this war was actually fought on all three spheres, like land, air, and in water. Now, what actually is the impact of World War One on India, or what are the effects of World War One on India? The first thing was, there was heavy recruitment or forced recruitment of Indians from villages to participate in the war as soldiers to fight for their kingdoms or countries. So this created a lot of anger among the peasants of India. Now, because people from villages were recruited to fight a war, there was obviously a shortage of manpower to carry out the agricultural activity in the villages. So this resulted in the shortage of the harvest or the food grains. So when shortage of food grains actually happened, obviously or automatically the prices of food grains started to rise. So the prices actually doubled between 1913 and 1918. That was the time period when the war was actually fought. And common people actually suffered due to the high cost of living because of all this. Another thing is, because the expenditure was increasing continuously, British, who were ruling us, they've planned a method to get that money out of India. So what they have done is, they've introduced a certain thing called income tax for the first time. Income tax was introduced in India, and customs duties were increased on all the products that were manufactured. Now, because of this, a huge amount of money was getting drained out of India. into Britain, and even in Britain this money was spent on war, so nobody was actually benefiting out of this. Now, apart from this, Spanish influenza was also at its peak during this particular time period, which actually killed 12 to 13 million people. So by around 1921, the census of Government of India's 1921 say that around 12 to 13 million people have perished because of this pandemic. So all in all, these are all the effects of the First World War. Just to give a quick recap, income tax was introduced, custom duties were increased, forced recruitment of soldiers from villages, which has caused a shortage of food grains. Because of that, prices of food grains were increased, and then Spanish influenza killed around 12 to 13 million people. So these are the effects of First World War. Now, moving on to the next topic, from here on, it is going to be revolving around very few people, and one of those would be around Gandhi. Now, Gandhi returned to India from South Africa on January 9th, 1915. So, whatever happened after he has returned has become a major thing in India during the freedom struggle. So after he returned to India, he wanted to participate in the freedom struggle. So he wanted to understand what is actually India and what are the problems people of India are facing. So what he has done is he has taken a major train uh, tour throughout the country, and he wanted to understand the actual problems of the people of India. So he has gone to different places from north to south and east to west, and and he wanted to introduce a particular concept to Indians in their fight against Britishers during the freedom struggle. So that concept is nothing but satyagraha. He says satyagraha is an idea which is purely based on truth and non-violence. It is actually not a passive resistance. It's in fact a method of the strong people, method of the strongest, not of the weakest. So he also says satyagraha or a satyagrahi did not harm the opponent or do not need to harm the opponent, but he will appeal to the conscience, that is the mind, without hatred or ill will. He want to make sure whoever is participating in this concept called satyagraha, the opponents would understand or should understand that it's going to be a losing battle. With a satyagraha, he wanted to make people feel like that. Gandhi also called satyagraha as a soul force. It's more of a more of a mind game rather than physical brutal force. So this is about satyagraha. He wanted people to understand his idea called satyagraha, and he wanted people to fight uh, using this as a method of their struggle. Now, after and around this particular time period, there were three major movements that have taken place in India, and Gandhi implemented these concepts called this concept called satyagraha in these movements. The first is in Champaran. The issue in Champaran is of indigo planters or indigo cultivators. So the issue here is in and around Champaran, European indigo planters were forcing Indian farmers to cultivate indigo on 1/3 or 33%, which is also called Tin Katiya system. So British planters were forcing the farmers of indigo to cultivate indigo. But why indigo? What is the use of indigo? In Europe, indigo was in huge demand. It was used by the royal families, aristocrats, and the rich businessmen. As you know, indigo is actually a plant, uh, the flower of which is actually used for dyeing clothes. And this dye gives a rich royal look to their clothes. So that is the reason all these aristocrats, royal family members, and businessmen, they want to use this as the symbol of status. So there was a huge demand for indigo, and this was making a lot of money for all these traders. So indigo cultivators forced farmers in India to cultivate indigo. Now the problem is with indigo, After cultivating indigo, the land becomes so infertile that it cannot be used for cultivating food grains. So that's the problem. India was never a country with cultivating commercial crops. It was uh, solely dependent on food grains or food crops. So once indigo is cultivated for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, the land becomes so infertile that it is useless to cultivate rice or wheat or some other food grain. So that was the problem. So this created severe famine. It literally killed these people with lack of food grain supply. So that was the problem. So these farmers requested Gandhi to come to Champaran and fight for their cause. So Gandhi went there, and his first successful satyagraha was in Champaran, and it was actually a successful one. He sat on a protest with all his followers who have come from nearby villages. It was a huge gathering of people from all the nearby villages who sat along with Gandhi. And finally British had to set up a commission called Indigo Commission, which allowed the farmers of India to cultivate whichever crop they want, rather than being forced to cultivate indigo. So this is the first satyagraha that was successful, in and it happened in Champaran and in 1917. Now, after this, in the year 1918, there was another problem in Gujarat. This time it was in the village called Kheda. And in Kheda, Britishers forced farmers to pay taxes. The problem was that particular year it was a severe drought and there were no crops. So when there are no crops, how would the farmers pay taxes? So this was a serious issue. In the support of these farmers, Gandhi again sat on a protest, and this time also it was very successful. So Britishers had to take down their notice to pay taxes. So this and then again there was another incident, or another issue in Gujarat again. This time it was in Ahmedabad, and in Ahmedabad cotton mill workers were demanding an increase in their salaries or wages by 35%, and the owners or mill owners association was not ready for the 35%. It was okay with somewhere around 20%, but then Gandhi forced to give in to their demands. Right. So that was how this third movement was also successful. So these are the three movements which brought Gandhi to the masses, and overnight Gandhi became a huge leader during this freedom struggle. He was the first person to have such kind of mass following, other than leaders like Bhagat Singh and few others. Now, coming back to Ahmedabad mill workers issue, this is the first time Gandhi sat on a hunger fast. So after this, it became a norm. For every other issue or every random issue, Gandhi was sitting on a hunger fast. But this was the first time Gandhi sat on a hunger fast. Now, moving on with these movements, there was another incident or issue that has taken place during this particular time, which is in 1919. On 18th March 1919, Sir Sidney Rowlatt has passed an act which allowed the police of India to arrest anyone and put them in jail for a period of 2 years without trial. And this act, was actually pushing freedom fighters into jail, or whoever was writing anything against Britishers or British government and their activities. This was like this was like creating fear among in their minds. Now, this act was actually called Anarchical and Revolutionaries Act 1919 because it was passed by Sidney Rowlatt. It was called as Rowlatt Act. Now, Gandhi, after this act was passed, Gandhi called for a hartal against this black law on 6th April 1919. And on 13th April 1919, in Punjab, in a place called Jallianwala Bagh, it was also a Baisakhi day. Generally, it's a festive season. So, in that park called Jallianwala Bagh, there were a lot of people. Few were protesting against the Black Act, listening, on the call of Gandhi. There were few others who did not know what actually was happening. They just came to enjoy the mela that was taking place inside the park. So, and then General Dyer, he entered into the park with his troops, and he ordered his troops to open fire, and firing continued for around 10 minutes. And it was reported that there were around 1,000 people who were killed in that particular incident. The official records say that it is around 1,000 people. The unofficial records you know say a much bigger number. Britishers never wanted to give the real picture. They wanted to put the number down. So this is a horrific incident that has taken place. These people could not even escape. It was a circular, or some sort of a park wherein there was only one entrance, and people could not even get out of the park from the other entrance, because there was no other incident. There was no other exit for them. And what actually happened was, those people who wanted to escape from the firing of these troops, they had no other option but to jump in a well. Either ways either ways they were killed, either from the bullets, or by committing suicide by jumping into the well. So this actually uh, you know brought a mass uproar among the people of India during this particular time period. And this news spread like a wildfire in North India, and many towns and cities, people attacked government buildings, and they were clashing with police. Now, as a symbol of uh, an answer, symbolic answer, what government did was much more brutal. Government forced all these protesters to rub their noses to the ground and salute to all the sahibs who were British officers. And this was the response of Britishers for what they have done. And for this incident, when questioned, General Dyer answered that it was my duty that I was performing. What kind of duty is that? Killing people who were not even having weapons. What kind of duty was that? And what I feel is, right now, whatever is happening in England, converting their churches to mosques, or whatever is happening, there's a lot that is happening in England. It is all nothing but the karma that they have to take it for whatever they've done during their colonial times. So, moving on, during this or with this incident, Gandhi called off the protest, and many Indians like Rabindranath Tagore and various other people who gave up their titles, which were given by British to mark a symbolic protest. And even Rabindranath Tagore gave up his knighthood after this. Now, around the same particular time period, there was one other incident that was taking place back in West Asia, that is the Ottoman Empire, which was fighting against the British. They lost in the First World War. So after the World War One, what actually happened was, the Ottoman Empire's king, who was called as Khalifa. I'm sure you're thinking of some other Khalifa, but I'm talking of the king. Uh, the title of the king of Ottoman Empire was Khalifa. Khalifa actually is the head of all the religious Muslims across the world. Now, he was stripped of his title because he lost the war. He is no longer the religious head of all the Muslims across the world. That was done by the Britishers after they won the war against Ottoman Empire. So, uh, against against the protest, I'm sorry, against this particular incident, Ali brothers in India wanted to fight for the rights of Khalifa against the injustices done by the British. They wanted Khalifa to be restored with his title, and also give back the lands that were occupied by the British. So they formed something called Khilafat Committee to support the Khilafat. So, and they were taking protests. They were participating in a lot of activities in support of the Khalifa. And Gandhi had a plan, or rather Ali brothers had a plan to join Gandhi and take this protest to another level. Now, so this is all about or these are all the incidents that shook up the world during 1910 to 1920 or 1911 to 1920, around that particular time. Or I meant to say, these are all the major events from that particular decade. Now moving on, we will look at the second decade, that is 1920 to 1930. 1920 to 1930, the whole situation revolved around one particular thing, that was non-cooperation movement. We'll try to understand why was it launched first in the first place, then what should participants be doing, and various other events. So let's start. Gandhi, around this particular time period, he believed that it was due to the cooperation of Indians that Britishers were able to survive in India, or they were able to rule India. So he believed that. So he said that if Indians stopped cooperating with the British rule would come to an end within 1 year or 2 years or 3 years at max. So he requested people of India to stop cooperating with British. He had a plan of action under non-cooperation movement, and in Indian National Congress session of December 1920, he came up with the final draft. So what should be the objectives of non-cooperation movement? The first thing is civil services, army, police, courts, legislative councils, government schools and colleges, whoever was participating in all these, as a student, as a teacher, or as a lawyer, they should all resign from their jobs. Voluntary, also people who were given the titles from the British, they should be voluntarily giving up their titles. Then they also should be boycotting foreign clothes. They should be picketing liquor shops. So all these, should be done by Indians. So if British, as a method to counter this, if the repression would be severe, then civil disobedience movement would be launched. That would be the next stage. But in the first stage, it would be it would be non-cooperation movement. So how to understand this particular non-cooperation movement? Let's see with different stands how it has actually taken place in different parts of India. Now, in cities, foreign clothes would be boycotted, liquor shops would be picketed, lawyers would not be working in the courts. Now, students in colleges and schools would be boycotting. Now, whoever was awarded with titles by the Britishers, they would be voluntarily giving up their titles. The most important thing of all this is promoting Swadeshi goods. Promoting Swadeshi goods. Now, what was the result of this particular movement? By around 1.5 year, by 1922, the British came to understand that this movement has caused a severe economic damage to them. Until then, the revenue every year was around 102 crores. But within 1.5 year, the British revenue, because of all this, has come down to 57 crores, which was a huge thing from India's point of view, bringing down the economic benefits that Britishers were getting, to bring it down to half. It's a huge thing back then. Now the problem was, what are the challenges with this kind of thing? The problem is, how long can the movement continue? How long can children sit at home? How long can lawyers, teachers, doctors, how long can they sit at home, not work? That's the problem. Also, the other problem was Swadeshi goods like khadi. Khadi was very expensive because it was hand spun, whereas the British goods which were coming from England, they were all machine made, they were all cheap. So that was another problem. Now, this is all about cities, how it took place in cities. Now, let's look at rural areas. What actually happened in rural areas was, there was a very famous person called Baba Ramchandra, and he was organizing something called Kisan Sabhas in Awadh, and the movement was against talukdars and landlords. Guess why? Why was it against talukdars and landlords who were Indians, and why not against Britishers? Because Britishers were mainly stationed in cities like Kolkata, like Madras or Chennai, or for that matter Bombay. They were not to be seen in the villages. In villages, the representatives of British were talukdars and landlords. So, and these talukdars and landlords were forcing the peasants to participate in something called begar. Begar is nothing but an activity in which work has to be done to the talukdars and landlords, but nothing would be paid in return to them. So the movement was mostly against talukdars and landlords, against begar. The movement also demanded reduction in revenue in the sense taxes, also abolition of begar, like I said. And there was another important thing. The movement was also pushing for the social boycott of oppressive landlords. Like, what do you mean by social boycott? Social boycott actually means, for example, there's an event or a ceremony going on in the house of a talukdar, and a washerman and a barber, or whoever was participating in different economic activities in villages, they would all not be going to his house. They would be boycotting him. So this was the call. And Nairobi Bandhs were also organized. And during this particular time period, Baba Ramchandra and Nehru organized quite a few Kisan Sabhas. Around 300 branches of Kisan Sabhas were conducted, or came up. They mushroomed around 300 branches of this. Now, what actually happened in reality? In reality, bazaars were looted and grain hoards were taken into their control, and then houses of talukdars and merchants were attacked. Now, in many places, leaders told peasants that Gandhiji had declared that no taxes were to be paid and land had to be redistributed among the landless. And the name of Gandhi was actually used to do everything and anything during this particular time period under non-cooperation movement. Now, that was all about in villages. Now let's look at what actually happened in tribal areas. In tribal areas, we actually have an incident, or one particular story of Alluri Sitaram Raju. He's from the Gudem Hills of Andhra Pradesh. So in early 1920s, he was organizing a guerrilla warfare against the British. Reason? The tribals actually get into the forest areas to collect firewood, to collect honey, to collect various other things that they were in requirement of for their day-to-day needs. But then Britishers passed on an act, and they closed down the forest areas, restricting grazing, firewood collection, and forest access. So this troubled the people of the tribal areas. So against this, Alluri Sitaram Raju organized a guerrilla warfare. He was uh, you know in a cinematic mode. He was actually attacking one police station to the other police station. Before this other police station could get the news of the first police station getting attacked, he would have reached there, and he was cutting down all the telegraph lines by then, so the communication would not have reached to the other police stations. So he used to go to all these police stations, collect their weapons, and carry out action against police officers who were carrying out atrocities against the tribal people. He was actually seen as an avatar of God. He People or followers of Allur Sitaram Raju believed that he had magical powers, and with which he could cure diseases, with which he could cure many other problems. But all in all, we have to understand a couple of things here. Alluri Sitaram Raju did not follow the footsteps of Gandhi when it comes to ahimsa. He was someone who believed that the skin of Britishers is very thick, and you cannot fight, or you cannot win a battle against these thick-skinned people until and unless their skin is prickled. That's how he explained. And the other thing is, he did follow, or he did participate in non-cooperation movement, but not in a non-violent way, right? So this is about Allu Sitaram Raja, and he was given the status of a folk hero after he was captured and killed by the Britishers. Even today, you actually see many statues of Allu Sitaram Raju in the Telugu states of both Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Next, moving on to plantation areas from tribal areas. Now, in plantation areas, the problem was most of these plantation workers, they were forced, or they were restricted within the plantation boundaries. They were not allowed to go out because there was an act that says, it was all upon the owner of the estate whether to allow them to go out or not. And why would an owner allow? The act was Inland Immigration Act. It restricts the movement of the workers, or workers in the plantation, to leave. So in Assam, what actually happened was, people understood the non-cooperation movement in their own way. They thought Gandhi asked all these plantation workers to leave working in plantations and move out. So And thousands left the plantations believing that Gandhi Raj would bring land and freedom to them. And the problem was, in the nearby railway station, when the steamer strike happened, they were stranded, they could not go back to their homes, and police caught them and brutally beat them up. So these are all the different stands under non-cooperation movement in cities, in villages, in plantation areas, and in tribal areas. Now, finally, how did it end? And everybody was believing that, because of the kind of support that non-cooperation movement gathered, everybody thought India would be getting independence in 1 or 1.5 year from then on. But then all of a sudden, Gandhi had to stop it because of an incident that has taken place in 1922, which is in Chauri Chaura, which is in current day Gorakhpur, which is in Uttar Pradesh. A peaceful demonstration was actually going on in a bazaar, which actually turned very violent, with police beating them up, and police were actually provoking the peaceful protesters. They were, using unparliamentary gestures and harming them physically. So as a reaction, the angry protesters locked up these policemen inside the police station, and they burnt it up. They burned the police station, and they were waiting outside to see the ashes of these policemen. So this was the hidden anger that these people were carrying on from so many years, because of whatever was happening with them. So it came out in the form of this beautiful reaction. So after this, the news spread throughout North India and South India like a wildfire, and Gandhi had to call this off. He had to call this off because newspapers were writing in a very bad light. They were questioning Gandhi: is this what non-cooperation movement is about, or is this what he was preaching? He was preaching ahimsa, but whereas most of the violent events were taking place. So Gandhi had to stop this movement abruptly. Now, after this, the reaction was as expected. People were disappointed with what actually happened here. Everybody thought India is about to get independence, but then all of a sudden the movement was stopped. Now, within the Congress party as well, many people were disappointed that the movement was stopped. Now, there were two leaders. One was C.R. Das, or Chittaranjan Das, and the other one was Motilal Nehru. Both of them came out to the Congress party. They started their own party called Swaraj Party. They wanted to fight, in the council elections. They believe that. They believe the council, being a member of the representative councils, is a solution to fight against the British. They believe that. And young leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose, they pressed for more radical changes within the politics of India. Now, around this particular time period, two major incidents or events have actually shaped the country. One is the effect of worldwide economic depression of 1929. The other thing is, the Tory government in Britain has actually constituted a statutory commission under Sir John Simon to look into the political future of India. British constituted this particular commission. Now, with Great Depression of 1929, what actually happened was agricultural prices began to fall from 1926 onwards, and they collapsed after 1930. So the demand for agricultural goods fell across the world, and peasants in India found it very, very, very difficult to sell their harvest, and that was the problem. And by 1930, the countryside was in huge turmoil because of this, naturally. And coming to Simon Commission, and what is the whole issue here? It was set up in 1927. The commission was to look into the political future of India, to constitute a system that could suggest changes. But the problem was, this commission literally had not a single Indian in it. So how would this commission, who's coming to look into the future of India, or give some recommendations to the political future of India, how would it understand without an Indian being present in it? These people from England would come with an idea of their own about India. They would not actually know the harsh reality of what India is. What is the aspiration of Indians? They would not know. They would not know. They would not even understand what is the problem in India. And these people, when they were about to land in the railway station, they were met with huge protests, as a symbol of protest. They had People had placards saying Simon go back. People also waved black flags at them. But then Simon Commission actually came to India, and it has given recommendations for India's political future. And uh, and around the same time, Lord Irwin actually gave a vague offer, which is the dominion status. Dominion status is being under the control of the British Crown, but then the Indians would be ruling India. So, what sort of independence is this when they are under the British Crown? So, Indians outrightly rejected this particular offer which was given to them. They said, we do not want a dominion status, we want a complete independence. And Jawaharlal Nehru in 1929 Congress session, he declared for Purna Swaraj, which is complete independence. And on 1930, January 26th, the day would be declared as complete Independence Day. Also, in the late 1920s, there was another organization called Hindustan Socialist Republican Association that was making waves in and around Delhi and Punjab. And this particular organization had people or freedom fighters like Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Ajay Ghosh, and Jatin Das. These were all revolutionaries actually. Even young people like Bhagat Singh, who was hardly of 22, 23 years old, he had an absolute match in terms of the following that Gandhi had at that particular age. And quite a few people were fed up of Gandhi and his boring ideas or unsuccessful ideas like non-cooperation movement or non-violence or ahimsa and satyagraha. They understood that these are all not practical around that particular time period. So I'm not explaining my views, I'm just telling what Bhagat Singh and his followers believed. They believed that these are all outdated ideas or unpractical or not practical really. So or I'm sorry, impractical. These were all not practical at all. So they believe that violence is the means to achieve independence. Through this organization, they've looted trains of British, and they used to distribute all that wealth that they've looted to the poor people. Also, there was one particular incident that has actually shook uh, the country at that particular time period, was the throwing of a bomb in the Central Legislative Assembly in 1929 by Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt. And after throwing the bomb in a place where there were nobody sitting, where there were no one sitting, they threw the bomb and they stood there. They did not run away. They wanted to make sure the British arrest them. They wanted this to be the news in the next day. They wanted people to come and sacrifice, not sit in their homes and keep crying for their independence. They wanted to make a statement here. So, and they stood there, they gave the slogan Inquilab Zindabad. They want Inquilab Zindabad, which literally translates to long live the revolution. So, and Bhagat Singh was executed after that for that particular incident. So these are all the incidents or events from 1920s. Now moving on with 1930s. In 1930s also, the political setup was very fiery, and it was a lot of buzz. There was a lot of buzz going on around. And in 1930s, there was civil disobedience movement. There were round table conferences. Then there were agreements like Gandhi Irwin Pact, Pune Pact, and there were a lot of other things. We'll start to understand one after the other. And by 1930 January 31st, Gandhi came up with 11 demands that he was giving to Lord Irwin. And one of those demands was, he wanted Irwin to abolish salt tax. He said the salt that is manufactured is from India. It's from Indian waters. It's done by Indians. So why would Britishers collect tax on salt? Natural reaction. Any guesses? British in reply said, right from Ashoka to Aurangzeb, every ruler collected tax. So right now we are the rulers. So if we collect tax, what is injustice in this? What is wrong in this? So Gandhi said, nothing doing. I just want you to not collect tax on the salt. So when you do not have a logical answer, you would come up with, I don't want to hear this, nothing like that, all these kinds of things. So he started a movement called civil disobedience movement. But the intelligent part or interesting part here is, many people come to a conclusion that, Gandhi is like this, Gandhi is like that. But the thing is, Gandhi is a very intelligent man. He understood the reality or ground reality of India. Like I told you in the beginning, he had actually a tour to move throughout the country. He understood what is the ground reality. So through this movement, he wanted to bring women into this freedom struggle. So until then, women were restricted within their homes. Not many women were participating. In fact, in non-cooperation movement, the first movement that we understood, very few women participated. Now this time around, he wanted more women to come and participate in the freedom struggle. So what is the commodity that is so well connected with women? Back then in 1920s and 1930s, the place of a woman was mostly in the kitchen. I'm not giving or justifying all these things. I'm just telling whatever it was. So by the time the mostly women were restricted to the kitchen. So what is the commodity that is used in all these items in the food? It is obviously salt. So if Gandhi is fighting for something that every woman is connected, definitely women would come out onto the streets. Look at this. I would tell you he's the most intelligent man alive at that particular time period. All the other leaders were emotionally connected with India, that's it. But he was also intelligent. That's the difference between Gandhi and all these other leaders. So he brought, with one simple thing called Salt March, he brought literally thousands of women onto the streets. See? So Gandhi launched his famous Dandi March as a part of civil disobedience movement from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi, with 78 of his followers initially. You can actually see, initially he started from Sabarmati Ashram, and he would be reaching Dandi. That would be the final goal. He would reach Dandi and he would pick up salt, which is from the ocean, and with his bare hands he would pick up salt and he would not pay taxes. So that's the motive here. And this spread out throughout the country and in multiple different places. The same thing was practiced. People or leaders of Congress party used to go to the beaches, pick up a handful of salt and not pay taxes. Now, on April 6th, he reached Dundee, picked up a handful of salt from the beach and ceremonially violated the law, for which he was arrested by the police. Now, thousands in different parts of the country broke the salt law, manufactured salt, and demonstrated in front of government salt factories. Now, once the civil disobedience movement intensified, after the salt march was started, the movement was intensified. As the movement spread out, foreign cloth was boycotted, liquor shops were picketed, peasants refused to pay chowkidari taxes, village officials resigned, and in many places, forest people violated forest laws by going into the reserve forest to collect wood and graze cattle. So when all this was happening, the movement started becoming intensified, and worried by the developments, colonial government actually began arresting Congress leaders one by one. And in 1930, when Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who's from the northwestern frontier province, which is the current day Afghanistan, who was a disciple of Gandhi, was arrested in 1930, angry crowds actually demonstrated in the streets of Peshawar. They started, burning the government vehicles and putting fire to the government buildings. And a month later, when Gandhi actually was arrested, industrial workers in Sholapur, attacked the police posts and the municipal buildings, law courts, and railway stations. And every structure that symbolized the British rule or the British government, they were attacked. And a frightened government responded with a policy of brutal repression. They actually arrested 1 lakh satyagrahis, including women and children. In such a situation, Gandhi once again decided to call off the movement and entered into a pact with Irwin. And on April 5th, 1931, Gandhi signed this Gandhi-Irwin Pact. So, what is the motive of this agreement? According to this agreement, Gandhi would stop civil disobedience movement. He would go to London to attend the second roundtable conference. The first one he did not attend because he was participating in civil disobedience movement around that particular time period. So Gandhi called off the movement. He went to London in 1931 in the month of December, and the discussion in the roundtable conference was mostly around separate electorate. What is separate electorate? The constituencies would be reserved for a particular community like Muslims or SC or ST, and the candidates would be from the same communities, and their community members would be voting for their candidate. So this is separate electorate. So Gandhi believed that this would further alienate, you know, people with the idea of unity. They thought this would create more distrust among the communities. So he thought British is trying to divide and rule. So he said no to this particular proposal. And when the leader of the largest political party in India, which is Indian National Congress, when he says no, that proposal would not come into being. So the talks failed, obviously. So Gandhi came back to India, and by this time, Nehru and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan were arrested, and Congress was declared illegal by the government of India, or the British government of India, and they banned meetings, demonstrations, and boycotts. And Gandhi, once he came back to India, he relaunched the civil disobedience movement, but the response from Indians was not a happy one for Gandhi. The response, was very, very much, a disappointing response. Now, how did participants in the civil disobedience movement looked at this movement? So let's look at this with four different groups of people. Let's look at rich peasants. Rich peasants believe that they need not pay revenue to the British. So that is the reason they participated. They thought Gandhi would talk about non-payment of revenues to the British in the roundtable conference, but there was no discussion about that. They were disappointed when the revenues were not reduced, and so they withdraw the movement from the movement. And what about the poor peasants? Poor peasants, they thought land would be land ownership would be given to them, and no rent campaign was also promoted very heavily during this particular time period. Even they thought they would not need to pay any rents. So but then nothing happened. No discussion at all came up in the roundtable conference. And so obviously a natural reaction would be not join the civil disobedience movement again. Now, what about the industrial workers? Industrial workers that demanded better wages and better working conditions. However, the participation was limited, and nothing much was discussed about industrial workers also in the roundtable conference. So they were also disappointed. Now, what about industrialists or the businessmen? The industrialists or the businessmen supported this movement because they wanted protection against foreign goods. They wanted a reduction in the colonial economic controls. They also formed something called FICCI, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Leaders like G.D. Birla supported the nationalist demands. However, they were not happy with whatever happened in roundtable conference, and they also were disappointed. Now, the problem was with the civil disobedience movement was, first thing is, Muslims did not actively participate in civil disobedience movement. Reason being, Gandhi called off the non-cooperation movement abruptly without achieving the goal of Khilafat. So obviously, this time around, when the call was given for call was given for civil disobedience movement, Muslims would not be showing interest. They lost faith in Gandhi. The second thing is, about women. Large number of women participated in the civil disobedience movement, but the status did not change in reality with women. Even Dalit participation remained very limited, though there was an agreement between Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar was the one who was supporting the cause of separate electorate in the roundtable conference. But then Gandhi said no to that. So because of that, B.R. Ambedkar was also disappointed. He was appearing as if he was the champion of Dalits. And once he came back in the Yerrawada jail, he had an agreement, and once he was back in India, he had an agreement with B.R. Ambedkar, which is called Pune Pact. Pune Pact was discussing more about reservations rather than separate electorate. Of course, the constituency would be reserved for a particular community like a Dalit community or a Muslim community or some other community, but the voters will be from every community, every caste, every group. So this is Pune Pact. Though Pune Pact was signed, Dalits did not show much interest with civil disobedience movement. So these are all the issues there. Now, moving on with the other topic, which is how to develop that feeling of nationalism among Indians, or how was this achieved? Uh, how was the sense of collective belongingness arised during this particular time period? When nationalism was growing around through the country, there were certain symbols that were created to promote the feeling of unity and oneness. Those symbols obviously are one is definitely the flag. There was a flag that was designed during the Swadeshi movement long back. So this flag had 8 lotuses and a crescent moon. So it's an error that there are only 7 lotuses on your screen under the flag, but it's actually 8 lotuses representing the 8 provinces of the British. Then we also had another flag which was created by Gandhi, which was Swaraj flag, which was in 1921. Now, flag generated that feeling of patriotism among people. So that was the idea behind that. Then there was this Bharat Mata image created by Abanindranath Tagore in 1905. Then there was Vande Mataram movement that was going on. And in 1870s, this was created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay or Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Then, then there was this collection of folk tales by Rabindranath Tagore and Natesha Shastri. All this, all this brought a sense of pride among Indians about their own history, their own culture. Then now let's look at the last decade of India's freedom struggle, that is 1940s. In 1940s, quite a few things happened. The first one obviously would be the Quit India movement, then the World War II, then Subhash Chandra Bose Indian National Army that he created, and then Japan's historic rise in Asia. Let's look at the first one, which is the Quit India movement. On July 14th, 1942, Congress passed a resolution to start or launch Quit India movement. This was done in Wardha, which is in Maharashtra. On 8th August 1942, the All India Congress Committee approved it in Bombay, which is the current day Maharashtra. Mahatma Gandhi gave the famous "Do or Die" slogan under Quit India movement. Also, the movement demanded immediate British withdrawal from India. It became a mass movement involving students, workers, peasants, and by this time, Indians were really, really, really fed up with British rule. They wanted Britishers to leave immediately. And also there was another important incident that has actually taken place, which many historians call it a very significant thing. The Royal Indian Navy carried out a mutiny in 1946, the killing the British officers. This actually caused a lot of fear among the British officers. They could not trust Indian officers anymore because of the killings of British officers that was actually taking place in the Navy. Another thing is, by around this particular time period, Hitler already started World War II, in which he was against England. So England was already involved in a war there. So look at the events that are surrounding the British Empire. Now, from the east, Japanese were pressing for Asia for Asians. So they were giving a call to the Indians that if you would not take over India from British control, we would come take over and take over. Now, the Indian National Army was already spreading its wings from the southeast and trying to enter India through the northeast. And look whatever is happening around this particular time period. Also, the Russians were trying to come enter India through the Afghanistan. So British were almost like sandwiched in this whole issue here. One, They were already stuck with the World War, and from the east, Japanese were trying to enter. Subhash Chandra Bose was trying to enter with his armies. From the north, Russians were trying to enter. From within the country, Quit India movement was going on. Royal Navy was, carrying out all sorts of mutinies against the British officers, killing British officers. So British decided that it's not going to be honeymoon period anymore. So they were not even in a situation to pay salaries to their officers. So they decided that they would be leaving India. So that's when they came up with this thing called cabinet mission, which declared independence for India. So on 15th August, India became independent, with along with partition as well of India and Pakistan. So that's all from this video and from this lesson. Thank you.